Gavin Spittle joins the show to talk about the latest Stars win over the Sharks. Is the top line success a positive sign of things to come? And plenty more on today's episode of Locked On Stars.
You're Locked On Stars, your daily podcast on the Dallas Stars. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Howdy, Stars fans. I'm Joey Erikson, former producer of 105 Through the Fan. Please be sure to subscribe. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. And as always, thank you so much for making us a part of your day and making us your first listen. Now it's time to introduce our guest on today's episode of Locked On Stars, my former boss, and more importantly, the host of Spits and Suds, which you can find on the Odyssey app and wherever you get your podcast, Gavin Spittle. Gavin, how are you today, good sir?
Stick tap, man, to you for all the work you're doing on Locked On. Yeah, it's great to be on. Man, what an honor. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Good to get you back on the show, and we're going to chop it up about Stars hockey for sure. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, current account, use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. All right, Gavin, first things first. Let's get into the Stars' victory over the Sharks. They came away with a 5-2 win. Good to get Roope Hintz on the board, Wyatt Johnston, and Jason Robertson. They have been snake-bitten recently. What did you take away from a 5-2 win over the Sharks?
So what I've taken away from the last couple of games is for Stars fans just to realize this is not your regular Anaheim and San Jose. These are two teams that are on the rise. Mm-hmm. So I think people think those were guaranteed wins. And San Jose, I mean, the Stars are now have won their last 5 against San Jose, but they've all been tight. So, you know, when you play, the parity in the NHL is better than it's ever been. Both teams went into Detroit and beat the Red Wings. So, you know, it's one of those things where I took away from last night. San Jose is extremely pesky. They played them tough. I thought it was a good win after what happened on Monday night. I thought they had a much better start to the game, which I think is crucial for the Stars team. And, you know, I looked at a couple of things. One, the shuffle of the Pete DeBoer lines. And I think that was something that we've all been wondering. And we started the season with Wyatt Johnston up at the top line with Hintz and Robertson. And then what Pete DeBoer said last night after the game was interesting, because just as equal as he hailed that first line, he talked about we were able to do this based on Maverick Bourque's play on Monday night.
Yes.
And I think that's really crucial for Stars fans to understand. So Maverick Bourque now can play with Logan Stankoven and Jamie Benn. And that was a line that didn't click early in the year. And they had to bring Johnston back down. So if they can stabilize these lines, I think they're in much better shape, because this is what I envisioned as far as the 3 top lines being. And I'd love to see this for 5 or 6 games and see if they can put something together, because we saw a different Jason Robertson. We saw a different Roope Hintz. As far as Robertson breaking that scoreless streak of 9 games, I think the one thing that I've been harping on is get back to the basics with Jason Robertson. The puck seems to find him when he's hot. And last night, that first goal, that is just an ordinary shot that maybe Jason Robertson might pass back to the point. But the fact that he gets it, twirls, and just throws it on net, that's what I want out of Jason Robertson. I want him to put pucks on net, because that puck found its way in. And then you saw his confidence grow throughout the game. And then Hintz, you know, they were playing more free. And I think that comes down to Wyatt Johnston. So I really, really like that as well. We can't go a game without talking about the play of Jake Ottinger.
Yeah.
How solid he's been and just consistent. And he looks fresh. His angles are terrific. The calmness that he's always had is there. It looks like we're having an amazing bounce back season. So Ottinger has been solid. But then I think the kind of light that continues to shine in a negative way is the power play.
Yes.
John Stagnant last night. Yeah. And Joey, you know this. I mean, covering as much hockey as you do, when you have 3 power play opportunities in the first period, that's an opportunity to put away the game. And to not do that, and then to, you know, on top of that, allow a shorthanded to go in, That's a game changer. That was a momentum swing as far as in San Jose's favor. If I'm a Shark, I go into the locker room, I'm tied at 1. Luckily, the Stars came out and within a minute scored to make it 2-1. That Wyatt Johnston goal on some nifty passing from Robertson and Hintz, to me, changed the momentum.
It absolutely did. And you forget about the couple of empty net goals late in that game, and the score looks much better than it really was. It was a 1-goal hockey game with less than 5 minutes to go because of the inability for the power play to chip in. If you get 1 or 2 goals on the man advantage the other night, it's a lot easier of a game to close out. But it got anxious, as it usually does, and it's sort of been the calling card of the Stars and Sharks recently. But you bring up a couple of great points. The top line in particular was my big takeaway. They looked better. It was the eye test for me. And you mentioned it. You could see the confidence exuding from him. Just the way Wyatt Johnston was carrying the puck the other night. It looked more like himself. And that is a big deal. And they need that more consistently. And of course, Maverick Bourque starting to grow more confident. His game continues to get a little better after each and every game, which sort of reminds me of Wyatt Johnston in his rookie year, where it's like, okay, you could see it, and then it just slowly, every game or so, it got a little bit better, and he's starting to find his groove. And you mentioned stabilizing those lines, because these were the trios that many of us thought were going to be the lines coming into the season. And then there were some injuries, and then there were some guys that weren't producing, and Pete DeBoer had to shuffle some things around. It's all starting to come together, hopefully. One of the guys that has been consistent all season long has been Matt Duchene.
Yeah.
What is with Dutchie, man? It seems like he's found the fountain of youth. He's got some juice, and he's just flying around out there in his mid-30s. What do you make of Dutchie and the start he is having? I mean, he's leading the Stars in scoring.
Yeah, it's a great point, Joey. And I think we need to start with Jim Nill, because, we tend to go after GMs for poor moves, and we kind of forget to praise them for moves that could be on the risky side. And let's go back. He signed in veteran Joe Pavelski that was up there in years. And then he signs a veteran in Matt Duchene, who we have to remember had never made it past the second round of the playoffs. And you have to wonder then, and why did Nashville buy him out? And then all of a sudden we get this, one of the team leaders that comes in, and he has blossomed. So I think that starts with, Jim Nill and the confidence that he had in Matt Duchene. I think the other thing that I love is Matt Duchene wants to be here. If you remember the exit interviews they had, Matt Duchene was saying, we need to get better. We need to do this. We had the opportunity. We'll remember this. He used we. And to me, that meant Matt Duchene was coming back here. And then to have that fair contract. So I've always been a fan of Matt Duchene's game, whether it's Colorado or the amazing seasons in Ottawa. He's just been one of those guys that, given space, and I think that is a key word when you're talking about Matt Duchene, because when he's on that line, Mason Marchment helps and Tyler Seguin, so they help each other. I'm not so sure, and I think Mason Marchment's incredibly talented, and I love Tyler Seguin and the two-way game that he's developed. But I feel as though not only has Matt Duchene been terrific, but he's helped their careers.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's so crucial, because when he moves lines, that is a different line. Marchment and Seguin are not the same. And then when Seguin goes out or Marchment goes out, it's not the same. So that trio, when they're together, blossoms. And each one of them creates their own space. And Tyler Seguin and Matt Duchene specifically need space because their offensive skill set is so high. So the more space you get, the more, more eye look you can get, eye test, the, easier to pass, things, just simple things like that. So Matt Duchene, to me, has been an amazing signing for the Stars. Would love to see him blossom on the power play, obviously. But it's just really, really impressive how, how he's looked. I didn't realize the physical part of his game too. And
Yes.
When I talk physicality, Joey, it's not necessarily throwing someone into the boards. It's the work in the corners and, the trunk that he has around his waist as far as not being, you can't move him. So there are those small aspects that he brings to the table, and his corners work as far as releasing the puck and puck possession has been massive.
Yeah, his back checking ability, just his hunt and want for the puck is something that may be overlooked until you get Matt Duchene on your team and you're watching him on a nightly basis. He's certainly the straw that stirs the drink for that line, which has been incredible to begin this season. I mean, the work that Tyler Seguin has done too. It's just, I don't know what he did to the hockey gods in the post at the American Airlines Center. He just can't get one to go in, but man, he's just getting scoring chances in bunches, which is a nice sign. It's a great sign. He's looking like almost prime Seguin from a few years ago. But before we move on to Tampa here on the weekend, would love to hear your thoughts on the defensive pairings. We saw Matt Dumba last week get scratched for a few games. Niels Lundqvist was out of the lineup. Brendan Smith has checked in. Lindell went up with Miro, which I think is a pairing that the Stars should let marinate a little bit. What says you?
I agree. I think that's a great point. I absolutely love what Esa Lindell is doing. He makes plays like last night. There was a play that could have been very dangerous for San Jose, and excuse me, Esa Lindell with the stick just taps it aside. And it's just a play that maybe a lot of people wouldn't notice, but it was a dangerous play for San Jose. So I love that pairing. And the reason I love that pairing is we got to get Miro going a little bit more offensively.
Yes.
And I'm not saying he needs to be Cale Makar. There's only one Cale Makar, but I think when one of the things I look at this blue line is, as far as scoring efficiency, and the forwards are doing it all for Dallas. So, it would be nice to get some blue line scoring. So with that, I think that you can just move Dumba down a little bit. And I think similar to what we saw with Ryan Suter as a second or third pairing defenseman, I think that Matt Dumba is a lot more effective. Ilya Lyubushkin is a terrific story. I was
great signing.
Critical of that 3-year deal.
Yeah. I think a lot of us were. We were hesitant.
I mean, I think he had been on 5 or 6 different teams, or maybe even 4, but he's only been in North America for 6 years. And that's an adjustment that I'm sure he's still getting used to. Mike Heiko was telling me the other day, after he made that beautiful pass to Sam Steele, outlet pass that led to a Stars goal. So Mike wants to interview him after the game. And before anything starts rolling, Lyubushkin says to him, "Can't you find somebody that speaks better English to interview?"
That's perfect.
And I love that kind of personality.
Yeah.
And he's brought a lot to the table. And he's been much better defensively. So once again, we have to stick tap Jim Nill for now, as far as that's a really, really good signing. Nils Lundqvist, I hated that he went out with an injury. And the reason I hated it is because it was a healthy scratch, but just based on matchups and working people back into the lineup. Nils Lundqvist has been terrific this year. I also think Nils Lundqvist has proven that he can play defense in this league. So this is like a reclamation project. And the fact that we're not talking about Nils Lundqvist as far as his minutes intake or anything like that, I think is a good thing. So I hated to see that last night as well. So I think they certainly have more depth when you can take a guy with over 700 games in Brendan Smith and insert him into the lineup. Like I was getting tweets last night. Does this mean the call up of Liam Bichsel? And the reality is that Bichsel is thriving down in Texas. You do not touch that right now, especially since you have Brendan Smith. And, so you have your defenseman. So it's one of those things that I think they're solid. I think that they'll gel as the year moves on. But 4 needs to get going. I want 4 to be, a little bit better. I think 4 is a really, really good player, meaning Miro Heiskanen. I think, and I would love to see just a little bit more of a step offensively. I noticed that he's shooting more. Defensively, no one's going to worry. And he's a terrific defenseman. But, when you look at that contract and the number of years, I want to see that point production I've seen in years past.
Yeah, the more he gets going, the more the Stars defense as a whole will start to roll. And that only means good things for the Dallas Stars. And hopefully they can continue that into this weekend against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Let's preview a very talented Lightning team as Kucherov and Vasilevsky are ready to duel with Dallas. We'll do that in just a moment. The Dallas Stars looking to remain in the W column this weekend against the Tampa Bay Lightning. And Gavin, Tampa Bay and Dallas pretty similar up to this point. 12-6-1 for 12-6-0 for Dallas, 10-6-1 for Tampa Bay. The power play percentages are pretty similar. The face-off percentage is the amount of goals they score. But Dallas is going to have their hands full with Nikita Kucherov, who is off to a scorching start once again. He's just one of those players that makes the game look so easy. It can be infuriating to watch sometimes because of how smooth the game comes to him.
Yeah, he is a player that when he's on the ice, you just love to watch him. And those players are kind of few and far between in the NHL. At the same time, they have a Hall of Fame goalie in Andrei Vasilevsky, who looks like his game's back as well. So I'm excited about these next two games, Saturday against Tampa and then Monday against Carolina. And the reason I'm excited is it's almost bizarro world, Joey, in that, last year the Stars were so good on the road and they struggled a little bit at home. This year they're dominant at home, and road as far as wins against quality teams, especially early in the season. That's why Minnesota was such a marquee win the other night. It was their first win against a team with a winning record. So, nothing against San Jose and Anaheim. Like I said, those are terrific teams, but going into Tampa and going into Carolina and wins this weekend would be a massive statement. And then they play Chicago after that. So a nice 3-game stretch to see, as far as where you're at. And then we get to Thanksgiving, and the Thanksgiving break is really that first sign where you kind of look at your team and look at team needs and how are we doing. So the Thanksgiving break is kind of like that first mark. So I'm excited how these 3 games go. I also like how the boys are on the road for a little bit of a stretch. And the reason is, further bonding. And what I really like, and this is going to be a true test as far as how they come out in the first, is that they get that extra day or 2 off. This has been a gauntlet of a travel schedule.
Yeah.
So many more miles than any other team in the NHL. Obviously, Finland plays a major part, but they really haven't had a break. They've been going every other night. And with that, you don't get that extra practice time. So hopefully they can work on their power play, try to throw some different nuances in there. So I'm excited. That said, John Cooper and the Lightning, you knew they were going to turn it around. Heck, they were good last year too.
Yes.
It's just that division they play in is similar to the Central Division, Joey, where, Boston's down, but, Toronto's, just fine. And, you have the Stanley Cup champions in Florida. You just have all these really, really good teams stacked up in that division. So, excited. I think, for the Stars, one of the thing is let's see, where these 3 lines are against a better defensive team like a Victor Hedman led Tampa Bay Lightning. And let's see how they do against Carolina, because obviously the tape's going to be out and 2 very good coaches are going to look at it in Carolina and in Tampa. So kind of excited to see where we are Saturday night.
Yeah, they just need to build momentum. It feels like 1 step forward, 2 steps back right now with Dallas. They can start to build some momentum and consistency, continue to build their game, and they have an opportunity against a test, right? 2 very good Eastern Conference opponents in Tampa Bay and Carolina next week. You look at Vasilevsky's numbers. He's 9-5-1, 2.13 goals against, 919 save percentage. And, Otter is right there, which is a great sign too, right? 2.25 goals against, 917 save percentage. So it's nice to see Otter is living in that realm of Vasilevsky, and he may not be in his prime. He usually turns it on when it matters the most, but Otter has been superb, and you alluded to it earlier. It's a big part of the Stars' success on home ice. So these road games are good to start building some of that momentum. And, Otter last season, the splits were incredible. He was a top 5 goaltender on the road, and he was more like 25th at the American Airlines Center. The power play is an interesting question. And Daryl Ray on Victory Plus last night said a baffling thing that, between Robo, Rope, Wyatt, and Miro, there's one power play goal between the four of them.
Yeah.
Like how is that? How is that the case? It's just what is going on with the man advantage? And they looked good the other night. I will give them that. They looked good, but sometimes you just have to score. You got to bear down and get those chances. And maybe, as you said, just back to the basics.
So I went back and looked at all 4 power plays, and I thought the fourth was the best. It had the best puck movement and the most aggression. And one of the things that even Pete DeBoer said last night, kind of stagnant, and everyone has their position and they don't really move too much. Mm-hmm. And there's also a part that we need to go back to like last year before kind of Joe Pavelski fell off. So I feel like they're kind of running the same power play as if Joe Pavelski's still on the team.
Yeah.
Whereas you saw several times Miro Heiskanen from the point with that wrist shot directly on net. Well, if you have Joe Pavelski with the high tip, that's one thing.
Yeah, but 95% of the time he's going to get a piece of it.
Exactly. Now all of a sudden we put another player in there. It's not always going to happen.
Yes.
And I think honestly that has been one of the aspects. So I personally would love to see more shots from the slot and more, puck movement and just change things up. So one of the things they did last night on the fourth power play is they hit the bumper in the middle, and the bumper, the guy that is in the middle closest to the goalie for the one-timer. And you can't always hit it because, that was the first power play in which I saw San Jose really crunch in because the Stars kept it in the zone. Mm-hmm. But if you look at that shorthanded goal, and I think the tape's out on the Stars power play, and what led to that shorthanded goal. There are 4 players on the ice when you're shorthanded. 2 of them went after Logan Stankoven. So there is no fear as far as puck movement. And that's one of the things that I've seen Anaheim doing, San Jose and other teams, how hyper aggressive they are against this Stars team because there's no threat. And they were able to steal the puck with Stankoven, and it was a planned play. And, they sent their man and it resulted in a shorthanded goal. So I think that, clearly they need better puck movement, but it just doesn't seem like it has creativity like you see with other teams. And the thing I'm most worried about, Joey, is this goes back to probably late last year.
Oh, yes.
As far as the power play woes.
Yeah.
So how is it going to change? And people have told me, well, what can you do? And I don't know. When Colin Blackwell was healthy, I said, put Colin Blackwell out there.
Just try something.
Yeah.
Something different.
Exactly. Put a guy in front of the net. I don't know. Put Sam Steele out there. But I know what's happening right now isn't working. So sometimes you have to switch it out. Maybe go 2 defensemen on the power play. I don't know what the answer is. They're the professionals. I just know you went 0 for 4 last night.
Yeah, the book is certainly out. Sometimes Robertson is really just a decoy out there at the right circle. He just kind of sits there, and sometimes he turns into a ghost on the man advantage. And as you alluded to, it's very infuriating because it just seems like they're doing the same thing over and over again. And I didn't even really think about the Joe Pavelski departure until you brought it up, where it's like, okay, yeah, they're just kind of sort of running the same thing, which kind of all led to Joe Pavelski in front to get those tips. And, the bumper spot has worked. It seems like Sagan is sort of the guy for that. You see him a lot of times on that second power play unit, get some chances in the slot. Back in the day, a few years ago, they used to have Rope on the flank at that left circle. Used to do that wide curl out to neutral ice and come down. Maybe they need to implement some of that. It was a few regimes ago, but there needs to be a change in philosophy because it's just, as you mentioned, that the tape is out. And if you can take away 4 and 21, you just really have no threats because the puck's never going to get to the net if you take away 4 and 21.
Yeah. And a lot of people like the dump back on the power play, and I don't mind it, but I mean, don't bump back a quarter of the ice because you're not fooling anybody when you do that. And that person's basically right above their own goalie and then making their way. That gives the defense a chance to reset. So I know you have to gain speed heading into the zone. I mean, heck, I'd love them to flip it in the zone every once in a while and switch things up, win the puck
Send
battle.
Stankoven and Marchment. Just go get it.
Yeah, I mean, the Stars are not a heavy cycle team. And
Yeah.
maybe that's another thing that we need to think about. They are a get in, shoot, get back. And maybe that's affecting because, obviously you need a strong cycle to establish a power play and to force that other team into the box. Because right now I'm not seeing a box. Right now, basically, I'm seeing, guys that are chasing the puck.
Yeah.
And, that's like, if that's the case, then find the open man. I mean, so that's why I'm excited about these next couple of days, because, I hope assistant coach Steve Spott, along with Pete DeBoer, that Spot specialty, hopefully they can work on this power play and come up with some kind of different angles that surprise Tampa Bay.
Yeah, maybe they need to try to score off the rush a bit more. They're so fast, and we've seen Rope in the past just slice through the defense and get some breakaways, even on the power play. So something will have to change. They're 4 for 30 in their last 10 games, so hopefully that will start to pick up. And again, that will start to get the offense flowing a bit more. And if the power play is going, that means probably 21, 53, and 4 are producing as well. Okay. On the other side, I'm going to ask Gavin some general NHL questions. Want to get his thoughts on the West. Alex Ovechkin, he's off to a great start, and plenty more. We'll do that in just a moment.
This holiday season, spread a little extra cheer with BMW. For every new BMW bought in the month of November, we'll donate 200 meals to families in need through Feeding America. Over the last 7 years, BMW has proudly helped provide over 17 million meals to those in need, and with your help, that number will continue to grow. Visit your local BMW center for details or visit bmwusa.com/drive to end hunger today. Take advantage of exceptional offers during BMW's Drive to End Hunger event.
This holiday season, Lululemon makes it easy to give a gift that goes beyond the moment they open it. There's the sound of them unboxing super soft Lululemon loungewear. And then, there's the sound of them slipping into deep recovery mode after every workout. With Lululemon, the real gift happens when they're living in it. Open the moment. Shop now at Lululemon.com.
Gavin, what is going on with the Winnipeg Jets? They look like an absolute wagon this season, and the Stars got firsthand experience against a Jets team that looks like they may be a problem. I guess the only concern is they're playing so well and it's November. Can they keep that up for the rest of the year? But man, they have the makings of a great team so far.
What's fascinating is that their head coach was on the bench with Rick Bowness and that we didn't see any of this. That to me is so fascinating that this offensive juggernaut was in this coach's mind and it just was never implemented because Winnipeg was always based on strong defense. And, we do have to look at Bones. That was not a good locker room until Bowness got in there. He kind of quieted things down. Now they're taking it to the next level. I think one of the things is Josh Morrissey, the defenseman. You have to look at him as one of the better defenders in the league right now. Each year he's getting better. He's better defensively. He's their quarterback. And he's one of their team leaders and basically called out the rest of the team and said, I need to be 10% better and everyone else needs to follow me and be 10% better. And then quietly, Kevin Cheveldae, the general manager, has made some really interesting moves. Getting, not easy to dump a salary like Pierre-Luc Dubois. And he is quietly changed the makeup of this team. And then obviously you have to look at, players like Mark Scheifele, who just year in and year out just gets it done. And Stars killer Kyle Connor. He's just one of those guys that's in the right position, not a big guy, but, just plays really hard. So they've been able to develop depth scoring, specifically on that third line with Nito Niederreiter. That third line has been incredibly effective for Winnipeg. So now all of a sudden, Winnipeg, which is known in the olden days as far as a top 2 line and heavy defense, now really throws 3 hard lines at you, and that fourth line is tough to play against as well. So they are similar to the Stars makeup, in which they have, really, really good quality depth scoring, and that alleviates a lot of the pressure off your top lines. And then to equal that, they were always good defensively, and they have Connor Hellebuck, former Odessa Jackalope.
Yes.
So, we all knew he's great, obviously, Vezina trophy and everything like that. But now all of a sudden he has an offense in front of him. And, that defense is still really good. So fascinating, the blossoming. I mean, this really came out of nowhere. I don't think many people were like, you know what, Winnipeg this year. Everyone thought it was going to be the Stars, and then Colorado were going to be the factors, and then Nashville. So for Winnipeg to get off to this start, I'll say this. I hate it that it's in the division, but I love it for that city, because this is a city that's a small market city, and they have changed the makeup where people actually are enjoying playing in Winnipeg. Not the biggest arena. And talking to our friend Connor Harabchek, who does TSN or Winnipeg Sports Talk up there, one of the things he was talking about, you can't walk around town without a conversation including the Winnipeg Jets. And I know Stars fans, and me included, hate that. But at the same time, that's a beautiful thing for the NHL, because that's a really, really good hockey market. So excited for them. I know they'll slow down at some point. They have just gone through a gauntlet of a schedule recently, where they played the Rangers, the Florida Panthers, and Tampa. And, they seem to somehow survive it somehow.
Yes.
So, we'll see. I don't know if it'll slow down, honestly, because the way they're playing and the confidence they're playing with, I don't know how you could watch this team, specifically watch them against the Stars a week ago, and say, well, this is a fluke.
Yeah.
I mean, they put it on the Stars, and not in like a bad way for the Stars. It was just like coming at you in waves, and the Stars, all they could do was just get it out of their zone because they were exhausted.
Yeah. Me and a lot of other Locked On hosts have to apologize for what we said about the Winnipeg Jets coming into this season. And you're right. You give Hellebuck an offense. That is a very, very, very dangerous team. The West is interesting. Feels pretty good at the high end. And then you sort of have a hodgepodge of teams like Seattle, Calgary's in there.
Yeah.
LA's off to a good start. What do you make of the first, we're about a fourth of the way through the season, and how the West is starting to shake up? There's some interesting teams in there, and, Colorado's still sort of on the outside looking in.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that Vancouver was going to be better. I really liked their off season, but obviously losing JT Miller is tough. They're not out of it. I mean, heck, they're the second wild card team.
Yes.
And let's remind everyone, Edmonton is back, and they are the first wild card team if the season ended today. So not the best start for the Oilers, but they're coming on. So that's good. You're right. It is fascinating. Talking with Joe O'Donnell in Minnesota, he's the play-by-play voice of the Wild when we were doing season previews on Spits and Suds. He said if everything came together, we could have something. And that takes a lot for everything to come together. And that one big thing coming together was the rebound of Kirill Kaprizov. And Kirill the Thrill is putting it on this year.
He's a hard candidate.
Yeah, absolutely. So for Minnesota to have 27 points, wow, that's tremendous. So we didn't expect that. Calgary's interesting because, Calgary is supposed to be in a rebuilding stage. So I don't know how much Calgary will stay up, but it's a really nice story. The LA Kings are very young, but they're a nice story as well. So it is fascinating. It's deep. But you're right. It's kind of a hodgepodge as far as like,
Mhm.
who's going to take that reign, especially, when you look at the Pacific Division. And Vegas is in the lead, but then you have the Flames, the LA, the Kings, Oilers, and Canucks, and there's only 3 points that separate them.
Mhm.
So, I mean, who knows what's going to happen in the Pacific? And all these things are kind of good news for the Stars,
Yeah.
because you just need to win your games and stay up there, where hopefully you're going to be a top 3 team. But if you're not, then keep racking up those points for wild card opportunities. Just get in.
Yeah, and you mentioned it's good news for the Stars, and yeah, you look at Winnipeg, who's off to a fantastic start, obviously, and it sort of puts things in perspective too. If you're Dallas, do you really want to win the Central? Because there's a real possibility the 2 division winners have to play Edmonton and Vancouver.
Yeah.
Do you really, are those the teams you really want to face? And if you're Dallas, you might as well just take a crack at Minnesota again, a team that you've had good success against at home and on the road. So is there really an incentive? And, Dallas has gone through it as well last season. Your reward is an 8 seed Vegas team, and then you get Colorado, and then you get the best player in the world. It's like, with the way the format is, it's like, if you're Dallas, you're already kind of behind. It's like, well, let's not put a lot of stock in wasting a lot of resources, manpower, energy to try to win the West. Yes, we would love to get home ice advantage. Hasn't really helped us anyways in the past. So, just get in, right? And try to flip the switch. But at the same time, you want to be playing well going into the postseason. I don't want the Dallas Stars to be limping, but if they're playing well, you're going to be okay. Like, they can make a run, and sometimes you just need things to fall perfectly. And I guess the good thing about possibly those wild card opportunities, if it is in Edmonton or Vancouver, well, you get a good team out either way. It's one less good team to have to play down the line.
Joey, I think you brought up a great point, and that's why I think they need to go back to 1 through 8. I appreciate what the NHL was trying to do, as far as division rivalry, as far as 2 needs to play 3 and just stay within your division. But you also have scenarios where the Stars had to play the last 2 defending Stanley Cup champions. And clearly we saw the wear out factor against Edmonton. And then you look at who they played, Edmonton, and Edmonton had to play the LA Kings and the Vancouver Canucks. Mm-hmm. So, and a Vancouver Canucks team that was down to their 3rd or 4th goalie. Yeah. So, it's one of those situations, you never know how it's going to play out. But looking back, you're like, wow, Edmonton clearly had the easier road, and maybe they were fresher, more fresh, so to speak. So, that's why you just kind of have to win what's in front of you. But I mean, I look at that Pacific Division, honestly, if the Stars happen to play Vegas, I like the Stars' chances.
Yeah.
So there's no one really in the Pacific that, to me, from a Dallas Stars standpoint, I say, oh, wow. I'm not sure about this. It's the Central Division I'm kind of keeping my eye on, and obviously Winnipeg. And you're right. No matter what, until after January 1st, because Edmonton started cooking last year after January.
They'll probably
3rd.
Do it again.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I'm watching Nashville and I'm watching Colorado, because I'm not sure that Colorado won't creep up. And I'm not sure that Nashville might not get it together. There are too many good players. And now when Nichushkin back, McKinnon is McKinnon. And then you look at Nashville, and maybe it's taking some time with Marcia Show and Stamkos to get going. But that's such a dangerous team, and Colorado's a dangerous team. So I'm not giving up on those, teams either. So it's fascinating. And once again, you look at the depth of the Western Conference, and it's like, wow, we'll see. I mean, I give credit to the NHL. It is impressive, the parity that they've been able to do, where it's like there are no easy nights in the NHL.
No, absolutely not. Except when you're playing Nashville, it seems like over the last month. I don't know what it is with them. They got shut out the other night against Seattle. They have struggled. And as you said, maybe this is a St. Louis Blues story from a few years ago, where they were in last and they somehow climbed the ranks, because there's too much talent up front. And even last year, without those guys, they were still good. And yes, there's a learning process, certainly, with Stamkos and Marcia Show. Marchessault's a little bit different a story, but Stamkos, who's in one place for his entire career, got to find out where you're going to get coffee now on game days and where you're going to sit on the bus and all those sort of things. But man, they are mind-boggling. Just nothing has gone right for them yet. And Colorado's a team, I think they're going to be fine. Lehkonen came back. Mittelstadt has sort of solidified their second line. He's scoring well. So they have too much talent as well. So yeah, there are a lot of teams that can creep up, and it really is so early. We sort of make our minds up on these teams, but it can change in a heartbeat. Just like it seems like the Stars every night. we have a different thought on them.
Well, and yeah, you're right, Joey, and we don't know what's happening. I mean, you saw Utah out of the gates hot, and that's something I talked about. I like this Utah makeup, but when you lose your top two defensemen in Marino and Durzi, that's tough to replace. I mean, think about it. If Miro goes down, how good are the Stars? Or even if Harley goes down or whatever. Yeah, you do have Bischel in waiting, but at the same time, injuries just play such a key component as far as the makeup of how these teams and can they make playoff runs. So, we don't know what's going to happen, but we do know there is lots of depth. And I'm with you. Nashville puzzles me. It's just one of those things where you looked at the beginning of the year and you looked at that power play of Nashville and, was talking to some people in Nashville, and it's like, you're looking at Ryan O'Reilly, Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, Forsberg, Roman Josi, and you're seeing this. It's like, wow. And you signed UC Soros to that long-term deal. And, it's just so fascinating how that hasn't come together. And that's why I'm like, okay, there's still time. There's still time.
Yes. I certainly bought into the hype. It just hasn't quite clicked for them. NHL just posted this moments ago, Gavin. Figured we'd share it. This is the goalie appreciation post. It's the Vezina tracker. Jake Ottinger is on that list. Where do you think Jake Ottinger falls? What number? There's a list of 5 names. What number do you think he falls in, Gavin? A little trivia for you.
4.
He's at 5th, so you're almost there.
Ooh.
Anthony Stolarz, former Corpus Christi Ice Ray, by the way, is at 4th. Igor Shesterkin 3rd, Philip Gustafson number 2 out of Minnesota, and then Hellebuck, no surprise, is up there at number 1. But Ottinger has 22 points right now in 5th, so he's in there, which is a good sign. Sign.
Yeah, great sign. And you know what? When we talked about Minnesota, I should have mentioned Gustafson because he is a terrific story for the Wild. And looks like they have a terrific goalie. And he struggled a bit last year. So, and that's so fascinating that you talk about it, because if we went, 3 months ago, before the NHL season started, where would Jeremy Swayman have fallen? Maybe in that top 5 as far as preseason Vezina candidates. So I say this, like, Jake Ottinger admitted that, have you seen my goals against average since Chris Tanev arrived? And as much as like goalie is such a polarizing position, it's like quarterback in the NFL, and it's one of those things where everyone's going to point toward Dak Prescott. Yes. And everyone's going to point toward Jake Ottinger, expecting him to save everything. And candidly, he really is this year. But, is it really Jeremy Swayman in Boston, or defensively? Are they really hurting, and not really helping out Jeremy Swayman? So it's fascinating because I personally have an affinity toward goaltenders. I love keeping track. I love that list you're talking about. And I also love that new names are on that list. And by the way, we talked about Tampa on Saturday night. I'm not so sure, and he wouldn't admit it, but I'm not so sure Andrei Vasilevsky doesn't get fired up by not being recognized.
Yeah.
He's a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Yeah, he's been glossed over, it feels like, over the last few seasons, right?
Yes.
He's just like, people forget. He's like, oh yeah, he's won 3 cups. And
right. And by the way, the other night, the fastest goalie ever to get to 300 wins, I believe.
Gosh.
Yeah. So, it's like, oh, okay. We're just kind of used to Vasilevsky.
Yeah, no, you're right. We're just used to it. And I think sometimes that almost comes at a detriment to those guys when you just get accustomed to seeing. But hopefully Jake and the Otter can stay in that conversation for the rest of the season. Let's flip it out east just for a moment before we wrap things up today. Thank you so much for hopping on. Good we could get you on. I know the Locked On Stars listeners were tired of hearing me gripe and moan. You're certainly lifting my spirits. I feel like I've been such a pessimist lately. I needed some more positivity, so I appreciate you for bringing that. A team that stood out, I mean, how can they not, in Washington? What they're doing right now, they had a very, very good offseason. You talk about some GMs that need some credit out there in Washington. Ovechkin is scoring. He may get the record, but Washington's been a good story off the hop.
They really have. I love the move of acquiring Jacob Chikrin. I've always been, pumping the tires of Jacob Chikrin.
Yes, he's kind of been in Stars lore over the last few seasons about getting him.
How do we get Jacob Chikrin when he was in Ottawa, and what Washington, they didn't have to give up too much for him. So yeah, you're right. I love what they've been able to do. And that was a fascinating story and kind of related toward what Dallas went through with Dirk Nowitzki. In that, you had Dirk in his final years, wanted to play here. It was awesome that he played his entire career here. But at the same time, it just seemed as though Washington was kind of revolving around this Ovechkin record and, couldn't really necessarily get those pieces. So it was Ovi that everyone focused on. Now there's a quality team. And, the goaltending is more solid. The defensive is much better. I mean, the fact that they're in the Metro Division sitting at second right now, 1 point behind Carolina.
Yeah.
You're right, Joe. I think this is obviously Winnipeg, but this is one of the better NHL stories.
Charlie Lindgren's been great for them. And you mentioned in between the pipes, former St. Cloud State Husky, not a big deal.
Love these references.
He's certainly been good. Would love to get your thoughts on a former bench boss of the Dallas Stars, Jim Montgomery.
Yeah.
I've always had an affinity for him. I wish he would come back to Dallas. And that's not a shot at Pete DeBoer. I know there were some things outside of hockey that he was dealing with, but for him to get let go in Boston with the incredible numbers he has had. I mean, winning wise, like he's had the fantastic regular season. But it's what have you done for me lately?
Yeah.
And they never really got it done in the postseason. But you have to feel like there's a lot of teams that are going to be knocking on his door, possibly here in the next few months, depending on how some teams go, but certainly at the end of next season.
Yeah, absolutely. And it starts with the regular season winning percentage for his career in the NHL, over 700. So, and then second, you cannot fault Jim Montgomery in Boston, and I'll tell you why. Because look at the coach before Jim Montgomery. It was Bruce Cassidy. And then what did Bruce Cassidy do? He won a cup in Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not faulting the Bruins organization. I just know that the expectations are at an elite level every single year for Boston fans. And you can only pull so many triggers, and one of which is coaching. I know that there was some talk about Marchman and him, kind of, not necessarily getting along the best. Both denied it. But at the same time, I agree with you. I think Monty ends up as a bench boss soon. I'm interested to see what he wants to do. Because with the success he's had, when he was with Dallas and then as an assistant with St. Louis and then on to Boston, clearly there's an NHL track record, but there's also an amazing college track record at University of Denver. So does he want to go back into the college ranks and, kind of have a place that's a little bit more stable? I'm guessing that he probably wants to stay at the NHL level. Yeah. I agree. I think he's a really, really good coach. I think his relatability is good. I hated what happened here in Dallas, but it was a necessary move. And I think he ends up, probably we'll see who's the first firing in the NHL. I'm sure his name is going to be at the top of the list, whether it's, and maybe he takes the rest of this season off and he'll be a hot commodity in the offseason.
The Celtics head coach was asked about him. I don't know if you saw this, but Joe Mazzulla, he said, we all get hired to get fired.
Yeah, it's a great point.
And that's it really is in the NHL. Number one, it's a head coaching carousel. It feels like it's the same names that kind of revolve. And then, as you said, like Cassidy, sometimes you get in a good spot and then you win. It's just that change of scenery. So maybe
you're
that's the
absolutely
thing.
right. I mean, let's look at our own coaching for Florida, New Jersey.
Mhm.
Where else?
San Jose, Vegas,
San Jose,
yes.
Vegas, and now Dallas. And we're looking at him and we're saying, like, Pete DeBoer does a good job with the room. Pete DeBoer, obviously the power play struggles, but look, Pete DeBoer has taken them to 2 Western Conference finals.
Mhm.
So, but are we really talking about Pete DeBoer and the revolving door that he's been in? I mean, kind of, as in the media and as far as fans, we kind of have to just look toward the future and not look back, because NHL has the quickest trigger of any league as far as getting rid of coaches.
Yeah. I mean, Edmonton last year, they wasted no time.
Yeah.
And Edmonton's a case where it's like, if they held on to their head coach, it probably would have been the same thing. Like they probably would have figured it out. But sometimes it feels like you have to make a change because it's just going so poorly. To bring it full circle and back to Pete DeBoer, since you brought him up, I'm interested just because, there's been a trend with him, and after a few seasons at a place, he kind of goes stale. Are we getting hints of that possibly, like with the offense that has had some issue and the power play? Like, is there some merit to that, or is it too early to be bringing up those concerns? Because there is that track record. It's like, well, after year 2, it doesn't seem to be as hunky dory in his spot.
I think this leash should certainly have some extra string on it.
Yeah.
Because 2 Western Conference finals is really, really impressive.
Absolutely.
The power play does bug me as far as not being able to make the proper adjustments, and honestly, not being able to either bring in an offensive specialist or some kind of thing to make the changes necessary. And that's either Pete DeBoer or Jim Nill. I'm not sure of the circumstances. I know he's extremely close with his coaching staff. So he might be to the point where he's like, I'm not changing my coaching staff. All that said, I think he has some skins on the wall in Dallas, and I think that he should at least stay through this year and see where it is. But I'm not so sure another coach comes in and takes them to the next level. I'll say the following as well. I think when you have a first line pairing of Heiskanen and Dumba, and then Dumba makes mistakes and you scratch a veteran like Matt Dumba, and when you scratch players that aren't performing, I think that says a lot. And then you put Matt Dumba back in Minnesota, which is his American hometown, where he played for 10 seasons, and he's playing well again. That resonates in the room, where it's like nothing personal, but you have to win your way into this lineup. And Maverick Bourque, based on where he was the other night, playing on the 4th line and getting scratched, and then now moving up to that line based on his play. I'm not so sure veteran coaches, they'll probably say, earn it, kid. Yeah. But Pete DeBoer's based on play, and, he's a veteran coach. So I like those moves. And I feel as though, like, inserting Casey DeSmith in certain, in Boston, I was shocked that Jake Ottinger is not playing where he played in his college hometown. That means a lot to Jake Ottinger. Obviously, they had a conversation, and Pete DeBoer explained it, and Casey DeSmith came up huge. So I think, the load management of Ottinger as well. So I'm looking at these other things that Pete DeBoer is doing, and I say, I really feel as though he has good control of the situation.
Absolutely. And I appreciated him scratching Matt Dumba. I know that's a weird take, but I appreciate it. It's like, okay, this isn't a Ryan Suter situation where you're just playing him because he's a veteran, and you're just going to let him make mistakes, and you don't really care. I appreciated that he's making moves. He's pushing the right buttons. For as much flack as he's gotten years past for sort of being stubborn, here in Dallas, he has not been afraid to shuffle things up. We've seen it this year and last year. He has made necessary change to try to get results. Sometimes they don't work, but you have to give him credit for at least switching things up. And it seems more of like merit-based here. This season, like if you're playing well, you're going to get in the lineup. You look with Oscar Beck, who has probably been the more consistent player over the first 18 games of this season. compared to Maverick Bork. But now that Bork is starting to find his groove, he gets a little promotion up with that line, and maybe everything's going to all tie together here. And you're right, the leash has to be pretty long. Let it play out. And we could be sitting here in the spring talking about a third Western Conference final.
Right. And by the way, just want to mention one quick point. I miss Colin Blackwell. That's tough.
Yes.
So, here's hoping. And because I thought he did a lot for that fourth line, including scoring.
No, you're right. He's been he's sort of been the Sam Steele ad of last season. He just comes in and you know what you're going to get out of him.
That's another great point. We don't talk about Sam Steele enough.
Yes.
We talk about the big guys, but we never talk about the Sam Steeles, the Blackwells, just those pieces. I'm glad you brought up Oscar Beck. He's a terrific story.
Yes.
He earned his way into the NHL. And, the best way to describe him is he's a salary cap friendly Radek Faksa.
Yep. He absolutely is. He's been great. He's been great. I mean, you can't really ask more out of players like that. And you mentioned the Steeles and Becks of the world, like you win championships with those sort of guys. Well, Gavin, thank you so much for hopping on and chopping it up. It's been an absolute blast. I appreciate you.
Man, stick tap to you, Joey. What you're doing on this Locked On Stars, absolutely love it. I follow it. Thank you so much for having me on. You're always welcome on Spits and Suds. Love having you on there. And I'll just end quickly and just say it's awesome that we have so many podcasts now and so much talk about our Dallas Stars. And that wasn't always the case. So the fact that we're having consistent conversations about this team in DFW, and my motto on our program is let's grow this great game together in DFW, and you're a big part of it. So appreciate all that you do, buddy.
Well, I appreciate your kind words. Thank you so much. Be sure to follow Spits and Suds on the Odyssey app, wherever you can find your podcast, correct?
Wherever we can find them, yeah.
Perfect, yes. Well, good thing. Go follow Gavin Spittle on the X thing, too. He's always having fantastic guests on. You had Mike Heika on the other day, so be sure to check in on Spits and Suds. He's always bringing it there. Well, that'll do it for a Friday edition of Locked On Stars. Want to thank you all for the love and support on all the videos. Be sure to subscribe. We're almost to 2,500 subscribers. As Gavin said, let's continue to build up this community, and the Stars deserve this sort of coverage. So we're happy to bring it to you every single day. Have a great weekend, Stars fans. Enjoy the Saturday game against Tampa Bay. We'll see you on Monday, and we'll be back. So long, Stars fans.